Hello and welcome to another episode of Talking All Sports. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We've got a lot to talk about. A few things happening in the round game. The NBA, Aussie rules, tennis, cricket, you name it. There's a lot to discuss, which I'm very keen to get stuck into, which we'll do right now. To kickstart the week in review for the week just gone, we'll talk about some football action as Manchester City have won the treble, the first English team since Manchester United back in the 90s to be able to achieve that feat. They have won now the Premier League, the FA Cup, and the Champions League. The Champions League final was against Inter Milan in Istanbul, and they won that game 1-0 with a lovely Rodri finish. That ended up being the match-winning goal. West Ham also won the Conference League 2-1 against Fiorentina. Jared Bowen in the 90th minute scoring the winner for West Ham and giving the Hammers a trophy, one more trophy than what Arsenal and Tottenham were able to achieve. Their London rivals, and Chelsea as well, were able to achieve this season. And other football news as well, Jude Bellingham has signed with Real Madrid, officially leaving Borussia Dortmund. There was a lot of rumours that he would be going to the Premier League. A lot of teams were looking at him and trying to get his signature, but Real Madrid have ultimately won that over, and they have now got Jude Bellingham for the next upcoming season after they lost the likes of Karim Benzema just recently as well. Now looking into the NBA, and the Denver Nuggets are NBA champions. They won the series in 5 games against the Miami Heat, closing that one out at home to win the series 4-1. Their first NBA championship in franchise history. It was their first NBA Finals appearance in franchise history. They won the Western Conference Finals for the first time in their history as well, and now are NBA champions for the first time in history. Nikola Jokic, thoroughly deserved winner of the Finals MVP. He was absolutely fantastic throughout the series. He averaged 30.2 points, 14 rebounds, 7.2 assists throughout that final series, and was monumental in helping Denver win that in 5 games. Fantastic achievement across the board for the Nuggets. The Heat being an 8 seed and having to win via the play-in tournament, or get there to the playoffs via the play-in tournament and getting all the way. I think a bit of appreciation needs to be shown to them as well for their incredible run that they went on just to get to the NBA Finals from the position they were in. The likes of Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Duncan Robinson, Caleb Martin were absolutely huge for them. So a lot of credit to the Heat as well, but big congratulations to the Denver Nuggets, who are the 2023 NBA champions. In other sporting news, in the cricket, Australia are World Test Championship winners after knocking off India over at the Oval. And they were able to do it pretty convincingly thanks to a fantastic first innings batting performance from the likes of, I would say, Warner to start off, making things look very steady until he got out. But mostly thanks to the likes of Travis Head and Steve Smith, both getting centuries, well-deserved centuries. They were absolutely phenomenal in the batting. And then over to the bowling, the likes of Scott Boland and Paddy Cummins were absolutely fantastic with the ball in hand, which helped Australia capture their first ever World Test Championship victory, and now the only 2 World Test champions ever in the history of the ICC Test cricket since it's been formed are Australia and New Zealand. So that's a very good achievement for the Aussies, especially when they've got the Ashes now coming up this week, starting over in England. That's going to be a fascinating watch, and can't wait to cover it more over next week. Novak Djokovic won the French Open for the men's. Fantastic achievement from him. That's now his 23rd Grand Slam. It is tied with Serena Williams as to most Grand Slams in tennis. Most singles Grand Slams in tennis history, and one behind Margaret Court, who had 24. So he is closing in on that record, and if he was to win and go through with a calendar Grand Slam and win the Wimbledon and the US Open, he would be outright leader. So fantastic effort for him. Iga Swiatek won the French Open women's final. That's a fantastic achievement for her. And the Las Vegas Golden Knights are Stanley Cup champions for the first time in their short history, only coming into the NHL very recently. Very interesting that they were a expansion team chosen, seeing as though in the sport of ice hockey, they are so far away from snow and ice, it's not even funny. They are in Las Vegas. But credit to them and fantastic achievement for them as they are Stanley Cup champions for the first time as well. Now we're going to be moving into some AFL talk, and round 13 was just a round full of controversy. I mean, we had the Dan Butler suspension that ended up being overturned. Ryan Mansell was given 3 weeks for his hit on James Aish, and James Sicily, probably the biggest fallout, probably the biggest one out of the whole round. His 3-week suspension for his tackle on Hugh McCluggage. Ryan Mansell will be challenging that decision as he looks to try and be available to play against the Saints. And James Sicily next week will be challenging his decision as Hawks have the bye and will be looking to try and play in their next game, which is next week against Gold Coast away, as the Hawks, as I said, have the bye this week. I think, well, let's just get stuck straight into the teams that impressed me the most. We'll start with Adelaide after they had a massive 122-point victory over the depleted Eagles at the moment. They were brilliant all day. They had a job to do, and they did it in some style. They were dominant from start to finish. West Coast kicking 13 points in every single quarter, and Adelaide just steadily got stronger and stronger and stronger. Didn't let the foot off the pedal, and with their more recent performances that were quite disappointing, the Crows, this was a very, very, very good bounce back and a performance that they needed to make, and a statement they needed to make against the Eagles. So I'm very impressed with them. The next team that goes into the most impressed category for this week is the Tigers. And gee, they've been very impressive the last, I'd say probably last month and a bit with their performances. They've only lost 2 games in their last six weeks, beating the teams like Geelong, Fremantle, the Giants, over in GWS in what was a very, very close game. Sorry, it wasn't the last 6 weeks, 5 weeks. And they've lost to only Port by 10 points and the Bombers by a point. They've been very, very good, and their last 2 games now under interim coach Andrew McWalter has been very good. Very gutsy win over in Perth. It's not easy to beat Freo on their home deck. So their performance was fantastic from the Tigers. The likes of Tim Taranto, again, was fantastic. Shai Bolton stood up in that last quarter when he needed to. The usuals got up to their very best. And it's a good little patch here from the Tigers. Massive game against St Kilda this weekend. They would like Ryan Mansell to play. But very, very good from the Tigers. Definitely deserve to be most impressed. And the last team going into the most impressed category had to go to the Hawks. I mean, there's a few teams who could be fit into here as well, but I had to give Hawthorn that last spot due to their upset victory over the Brisbane Lions at the MCG. Another team who was just brilliant. And although that was a poor first half performance against Port Adelaide and end up losing still by around 10 goals, their recent form as well in the past month has been very good. Hawthorn going into the bye. 3 wins, 1 loss, knocked off teams like the Saints, Brisbane over the weekend, obviously lost to Port by around 10 goals, and obviously beating West Coast by over 100 points. So the Hawks have been very good actually for this past month. Obviously, like I said, I've said it a couple of times now, apart from that loss to Port Adelaide, which was pretty disappointing. But this is great stuff for Hawks fans. This young team stringing a lot of good, consistent games together. I hope for their sake that the bye does not hurt them when it comes to the form that they're in at the moment. But a lot of promising signs from the Hawks, and a great win on the weekend gets them a deserved spot in the most impressed. Now we're going to be looking at the teams who fall into the most disappointed bracket for this week. I'm going to start off with the Freo Dockers. They really needed to win that game at home against the Tigers. Pretty disappointing, especially when they're fighting for finals. To be putting up a performance like that, even just the start, was not good enough. They had to work their way back into the game, Freo. So pretty disappointing from them. Like I said, they're fighting to find the final spot in the top 8 now, and they got to really work hard and really win those types of games. So it does put a little I wouldn't say a dagger into their season, but it dampens their chances of potentially making the 8 this year. it really, I think Freo could potentially, if they miss the 8, we'll be looking at a game like this at the end of the season and going, that's the one we couldn't let go. So I think Freo fans are rightfully so frustrated and disappointed with that performance, and I think I don't think it's harsh to say that it was quite disappointing that they weren't able to beat Richmond, who were in the Tigers' defence very good. But they needed to get that win just to stay in contention with the bottom half of that top 8, because there's a lot of contenders like Geelong, Adelaide, and even the Tigers you can put in there. The Bombers, the Dogs are all fighting for one of those final spots in the top 8 as well. So pretty disappointing from Freo. They definitely go into the most disappointed. The next team that goes in the most disappointed, I know they've been very injury-riddled throughout the season, but 120 points is not good enough. The Eagles, they go into the most disappointed as well. I mean, they've been injury-riddled all season. Let's not get that wrong. But they weren't losing by 120 points. They were losing by probably half of that. So 60 to 70 points, 50 to 70, I reckon that has been their average losing margin. I think their average losing margin has been just over 70 points this season so far. I'm disappointed in them as well, because what I saw against Collingwood the week before, that spirit and fight and effort where they were challenging Collingwood and started to get themselves back in the game. It looked like, if things start to go their way and they continue this for the rest of the game, they could potentially pull off a massive upset. They weren't able to show, they faded out in that game, in fairness, and I don't think many people batted an eyelid. I think they expected it, but they were encouraged to see what West Coast was showing with fight and spirit in that game. There was not even close to a bit of fight and spirit, apart from their first goal of the game coming to the debutant, Ryan Marrick, who got drafted only 2 weeks ago and was their leading goal kicker on the day. There was no fight or spirit in that game against the Crows, and they let the Crows do whatever they want. I mean, they had mismatches all over the ground. I understand that, but when it comes to effort and, your attempt at trying to either start the game well and get it on your terms or try and wrestle the momentum back, it didn't look like West Coast were trying to do that. They almost let Adelaide play their game, and West Coast were just trying to, get out of there unscathed. And I understand that with the amount of injuries they have at the moment, but pretty disappointing. 122 points. You shouldn't really avoid the most disappointing bracket if you were losing by over 100 points, so they have to go in there, the Eagles. And the last team going into the most disappointed bracket, it has to be the Brisbane Lions. All the teams who impressed me the most, the teams that they knocked off, are all in the most disappointed bracket. Just disappointing. I feel like this MCG hoodoo, even though they played well against Richmond last year there and then ultimately lost, but then beat Melbourne in the semi-final at the G to get themselves into a preliminary final, and that was a drought-breaking win for them at the ground. It's playing in their minds. It's starting to become a very big mental challenge for Brisbane, and something that they really need to fix. They play Melbourne later on in the year at the G, and then they probably, if they make finals or if they make top 4, they're going to have to probably play away from home or play at the G. I think their last 2 away trips now, they've lost both. Lost to Adelaide Oval, and that is a tough task, but I know I'm big praise on Hawthorn, but that's a game that they definitely should win. They are, when it comes to class, they are classier than Hawthorn. The experience they've got, they should have won that game, Brisbane, and disappointing with their performance at the G, and it seems as though it's mentally getting a bit struggling for them, the Lions, to play there, and that's something that they've got to figure out before the pointy end of the season, because if they make the grand final, it's not at the Gabba, it's not at Optus Stadium, like it has in very recent history. It's going to be at the G like it's always been. So they got to figure that out quickly, Brisbane, and they also got to try and get a win on the board. They play Sydney this week at the Gabba. A lot easier task because they sleep in their own beds and they're playing at the Gabba, but they really need to put in a good performance to get themselves out of the most disappointed for this week. Now we're going to be looking at the round 13 power rankings, and as you can see, Port Adelaide, with their win over the Dogs on Friday night and Brisbane's loss on Saturday to the Hawks, they move up to second, and honestly, they could potentially be number 1 potentially at the end of this season if they keep going this way and Collingwood were to drop off. They are in some stellar form. They've won 10 in a row, the power, and it doesn't look like anyone is stopping them. Melbourne get closer to trying to take third spot off Brisbane. I was tempted as a Melbourne supporter to do it after their great win on King's birthday on Monday, but I think it's only right that they stay there in fourth at the moment. Melbourne, Brisbane have still been a little bit better in recent time. The Cats, they stay in fifth position, had the bye, so it would be rude to try and move them down or move them up ahead of anyone. The Crows, they get higher though to that top four. And again, they're a team that wins one week, loses the next. They have the bye this week, but after the bye, the Crows, the big test is on them. They got to win that game against the Pies, or at least show a very, very good effort against Collingwood away from home at the G. It will be tough, but if they can get a win, I think a lot of people will be saying the Crows are definitely a top 8 team this season. The Dogs, they obviously would have to slide due to their loss to the Power, and the Crows just a fantastic 100-point win. You couldn't not reward that. In the middle, it still stays the same around. Sydney now in 10th and clinging on to a top 10 spot due to their form as they are slowly falling even further back. Great win by the Saints on Thursday night, by the way. Fantastic contributors all around. And Carlton fall into the bottom 4 for the first time this season. I thought I would have them potentially top 4 at one point this season. Didn't think it would be bottom 4. They have been diabolically bad. And, I mean, the club's capitulated internally. A lot has to change, not from the coaches or the players, but a lot has to change, I think, from the board. There is a lot of bad juju going around at the Blues. The supporters have had enough, although I have tipped them to beat Gold Coast this week. So that's just a gut feeling I've got that they'll get the win this time. But of all teams in the competition that need either the season to end or the bye, West Coast and Carlton are the 2 teams who need it the most. And that is the power rankings at the moment. Now we're going to get stuck into 3 more Star of the Week nominations. I'm going to kickstart things with the big Texan, Tex Walker, who kicked 10 goals too in his outstanding 250th game against the Eagles. He also had 21 disposals, 11 marks, 603 meters gained, 17 score involvements, and for a full forward to have 11 contested possessions is quite astronomically amazing. He's now firmly sit inside the top 5 of the Coleman as we speak due to his 10-goal performance, and could be a sneaky chance, just like last year for most of the year where he was a sneaky chance of winning the Coleman. Is that the best milestone performance though of all time? 10 goals too in a milestone game for you. It's pretty darn good. Let me know in the comments what you think, if I've missed out on any athletes that have had better milestone performances, but I think that one is a very, very good one from Tex. Kicking 10 goals too against the Eagles on the weekend thoroughly deserves a Star of the Week nomination. The next nominee for Star of the Week, and I would like to say this is a stacked Star of the Week nominations this week, because there was quite a few people who missed out that probably should have got one in other weeks. Jack Viney, his performance against Collingwood would have got him one this week. He misses out. The likes of Nasiah Wanganeen-Malira, who was fantastic for the Saints, he misses out. A 5-goal haul from Peter Wright on his return against Carlton, he misses out. So this is a stacked Star of the Week nomination. I thought I'd clarify that. And the next one to get one is probably who people would say is probably the best tennis player now of all time. It is Novak Djokovic, after he claimed his 23rd Grand Slam title, which, like I said, is now the most in men's singles history. And he also now is tied with Serena Williams on 23 for singles titles, and one behind Margaret Court for all-time single titles. A brilliant achievement in winning the French Open. Had to beat the young superstar Carlos Alcaraz in the semi-final to get there and beat Casper Ruud. That's his 3rd French Open title now for the Joker, and it does beg the question. I mean, in my opinion, it's pretty hard to argue otherwise as to why he is not the best tennis player of all time. And the stats are really in his favor, but let me know in the comments what you guys think. Is Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, are they still better than Djokovic? Or has this performance and this achievement cemented it for you that now Djokovic is the greatest tennis player of all time? And the last Star of the Week nomination, couldn't go past this guy, and it's been a great few weeks for Serbia. Nikola Jokic he gets a Star of the Week nomination after he was brilliant, as always, in the NBA Finals. Like I said earlier, averaged 30.2 points, 14 rebounds, and 7.2 assists throughout the Finals series. He now has 2 MVPs, a Finals MVP, a championship, and he is a 5-time All-Star. Does that make him the best center of all time with this resume? I know a lot of people have been debating it and discussing it as this got him past Shaquille O'Neal, Hakeem Olajuwon? Is he a top 10 NBA player now of all time? Let me know in the comments what you think. I think it's hard to argue Nikola Jokic can't be in that conversation. He's been incredible for what he's been able to produce. He probably should be a 3-time MVP, in my opinion, with the performance he had this season. And he almost pulled off one of the greatest NBA seasons of all time if he was to claim the MVP, Finals MVP, with that stat line and be an NBA champion. He's been fantastic, Nikola Jokic, but let me know if you think he is now the best NBA center of all time. Now we're going to look at the week ahead. We'll start off with the round 14 AFL action. Quite a few teams are on a bye, but it kicks off Thursday night. Port Adelaide take on Geelong in what is supposed to be a super, super big clash. Very excited to see how that goes. And I think Friday night, Brisbane-Sydney is also going to be a ripper. Sydney have got a lot to play for. Luke Parker will be back. They've got the likes of Callum Mills coming back as well. Dane Rampy's second game back into the side. It's going to be a major, major game against the Brisbane Lions, and that'll be very interesting to watch on Friday night as well. The Giants host the Dockers. That's going to be quite interesting. Freo need to bounce back. The Giants coming off a good win against North in Tassie, and the Giants are a hard team to beat. They are very plucky, this young GWS team. Richmond versus St Kilda at the MCG on Saturday night in Matty's match. That's going to be fantastic for the Matty Riewoldt Foundation. A very good cause, as obviously Jack Riewoldt will be playing and has got close ties as that it was his cousin. So will be a very, very good game on Saturday night. Very hard to pick that one, whether Richmond or St Kilda, I was about to say Sydney, St Kilda will get up for that one. On Sunday, Carlton play Gold Coast at the MCG, and I think this is Carlton's probably one of their last chances for the short-term future of getting a win. I believe they can do it, and it probably is the last time I'm going to tip them this season if they were to lose. I just feel like this is a game just before the bye where they can win, get the pressure off them as they're able to get a win, and the players and the coaching staff can just enjoy the week off and then be able to come back and just give it a whirl for the back end of the season. And then the round finishes off with an interesting one. North Melbourne taking on an out-of-formed Bulldogs side at Marvel Stadium. North are not too bad at Marvel Stadium, have not been whacked around like they have in recent years at that ground. And the Dogs are out of form, lost 3 in a row now, need a win badly. That will be so interesting to watch. Also coming up this week, the Ashes, they begin between Australia and England over in the UK. That'll be very interesting to watch. Will Australia retain the Ashes after they are able to win it in Australia last time out, or England with the Bazball technique? That's probably the interesting part, the way England are going to play. Are they able to take it back and win it on their home soil? The NBA draft is coming up this week as well. Fascinating to watch that unfold. Victor Wembanyama probably going to go pick one, but anyone's guess after that who will go where. We'll get some probably Nikola Jokic stories of players being drafted during an ad break. That'll be very interesting and awesome to watch and just see young people's dreams become a reality when they get drafted to an NBA franchise. So that's coming up this week, and it's only a week after the NBA season is over, so the NBA just doesn't stop moving. Also, State of Origin, Game 2 over in Queensland. The Maroons won Game 1 in Adelaide against New South Wales, running away with it late. Are they able to win the series on their home deck, or are New South Wales about to spoil the party and then send it to a decider in Sydney for Game 3, where they will try and claim the State of Origin themselves? That'll be interesting to watch. That's on Wednesday night coming up this week as well. And that's all we've got time for on this week's episode of Talking All Sports. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Please, if you feel like it, feel free to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments who you think is the best NBA center of all time, the best tennis player of all time, and all your thoughts on the AFL, the round game football, NBA, any sport, you name it. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you want to hear talked about in upcoming episodes as well. And for now, I'll just see you next week.